Appreciate the opportunity to be with you all today. Josh Branscombe, State Representative, 83rd District. I'll let my guests introduce themselves.
I'm State Representative Jennifer Decker, District 58.
State Representative Rachel Roberts, District 67.
Jason Denny, Anderson County Clerk and President of Kentucky County Clerks Association.
Thank you all once again for the opportunity to be here to speak with you on House Bill 564. Last session, this General Assembly passed one of the largest election reform bills in nearly 100 years with House Bill 574. This is a bipartisan bill that made it easier to vote while adding increased security to our elections. Like many bills, oftentimes we have to follow up to do some cleanup or some housekeeping, and I appreciate the opportunity to once again work with Representative Decker, Representative Tipton, and this year as well with Representative Tate, Representative Roberts, Representative Wheatley. Always appreciate your feedback as well. Like House Bill 574, we worked closely and sought the input of our county clerks, the State Board of Elections, Secretary of State, many of whom are here today to support the bill. House Bill 564, it's not an election reform bill like what we seen last year. As mentioned, this is primarily some cleanup language. However, there are some areas in which we've included technical changes to help increase the efficiency and security of our elections. It's a pretty large bill. I'm going to give you just a brief overview of what the bill does. The bill creates a new section of KRS 117 that separates in-person absentee voting from mail-in absentee voting. This will provide clarity for reference, and you'll see that there's many sections where it looks like we're adding new language, and there's sections where we're striking existing language. In a lot of those situations, the language that has been struck has actually been moved over to the new section. There's been a few changes, but for the most part, that's what it is. We've established the time for the in-person absentee voting, or what we call early voting. That's the Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Those times had not been set, so we wanted to make sure there was uniformity while still allowing our clerks some flexibility. The bill fixes what we call the gap period, and we spoke about this at the Kentucky State Fair, that this was an item that we were going to be working on. What we call the gap period for allowing absentee voting. This is probably one of the major cleanups of the bill and is the primary reason why we've declared an emergency. So the last day to request an absentee ballot through the portal is 14 days from Election Day. After that, there was no mechanism in place to request a ballot or vote excused absentee until the Thursday of in-person voting. So we've got a gap there. So if on day 13 you find out, the portal closes, day 13 you find out that you're not going to be able to vote in person, whether that's on Election Day or the Thursday, Friday, Saturday of early voting, there was no way that you would be able to vote or get a ballot. So this bill lays out the criteria one would have to meet in order to vote excused absentee. We've taken the previous statute of when we used to be able to vote absentee prior to COVID and apply that to this period between the 13 days out from election until the Thursday of in-person voting. We have to make sure that we're not punishing our hardworking Kentuckians who may find out on day 13 that they're not going to be able to vote. The bill also prohibits the transmittal of absentee ballots until 6 o'clock prevailing time on Election Day. We've also set up security protocol to where 2 election officials must check the record and sign off on the numbers on the public counter of each voting machine at the end of each night of voting, and the following morning they check it again to make sure those 2 numbers match. Additionally, the tamper-resistant seals are to be checked at the end of each day and the following morning to ensure that no voting equipment has been tampered with. Prohibit voting equipment that tabulates or aggregates votes used in official election results from connecting to any network, internet, or any device external to the voting system, and we've added that any attempt to do so is a Class D felony.
Can you say that again, Representative Branch?
Sure. Prohibits voting equipment that tabulates or aggregates votes used in official election results from connecting to any network, internet, or any device external to the voting system, and we've also added that any attempt to do so will be a Class D felony. We're requiring the county clerks to provide precinct-level election results for voting, and this will include Election Day as well as in-person absentee voting. We've heard from a lot of folks that want that data. And require secure online connection for the transmittal of unofficial election results. And the bill also cleans up language that if a vacancy occurs after the June filing deadline for unexpired terms, political party candidates are able to file certificates of nomination and not be limited to being a write-in candidate. Mr. Chairman, those are the highlights of the bill. I believe Representative Decker also has a few words to say, if that's okay with you.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for having us today, and thank you to all the members. I wanted to comment just a little bit about the purpose of the bill, the same purpose we had in last year in House Bill 574. We intend to have elections that have integrity in Kentucky. We know of no reason for any voter in this state to feel that their elections are not secure. We want voter integrity and we want high voter turnout. And that's what every measure that we put forward is aimed at. We appreciate all of the election officials. Every election official in Kentucky has been involved in these bills. We appreciate the work of the county clerks. We hear from them individually and through their association, from the State Board of Elections, from the Secretary of State. All have been involved. These are people who have dedicated their professional lives to voter integrity and voter turnout. There's no one in that group who is interested in anything other than having free and fair elections. Not only that, we have 120 counties with 120 county clerks who are responsible and are elected by their constituents to ensure that the elections are fair and have integrity. These county clerks are bipartisan. They are from various parties. Not only that, they have boards of elections in each county that are bipartisan with 4 members, including the sheriff who is elected. And you heard various things today about the integrity of the count and the machines. They have seals, they have keys, they have certifications, and all of this is done out of a civic duty by all of these people. There is no one in Kentucky, and what a broad, diverse set of voter officials there are in this state. If other states have problems, those are the problems in the other states. Our state has a system that has integrity, and all of our efforts are to ensure that, because if there is doubt in the integrity of your voting system, people simply will not vote. And so I just want the committee to be assured that all of these efforts are aimed at those goals. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'd also like to invite Representative Roberts to speak as well.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. We've all seen headlines about harassment and threats lobbed at poll workers in recent elections. KRS 119255 levies a penalty, a Class D felony, for threat of violence or intimidation against election officials. In the committee sub, we update the definition to clarify the inclusion of precinct officers and poll workers. If we are to truly protect the integrity of our elections, we should start by protecting the people who operate our polling places on Election Day. Thank you.
Thank you. We have the committee sub that was moved and seconded. Now we need a voice vote on that committee sub. All in favor, vote aye. Opposed? Okay, the committee sub is now fully in front of us for House Bill 564. We have anybody else going to speak at the table?
Yes, Anderson County Clerk Jason Denny.
Thank you, sir.
I want to thank all the bill sponsors and all those parties involved in drafting this piece of legislation. As with any bill, we realized at 574, once it was implemented, there needed to be a few things added, and we took care of that gap for those voters to be sure that everybody had the ability to come in and vote. And any concerns with the County Clerks Association were taken care of in this cleanup legislation. But thank you all for letting us be a part of this. We totally support this bill.
Thank you. We do have questions. Representative Blanton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question, and depending on the answer, a potential follow-up.
Okay.
First of all, let me thank you all for bringing this. having secure elections are very important to all of us, not only to those who are putting themselves out there by being on the ballot, but also to our voters. Oftentimes I've heard people say that, well, there's no need of me going to vote and my vote don't count. Well, we want to make sure every vote counts, because they do. It's our democratic process. But my question is this. If this piece of legislation moves to the General Assembly, there is an emergency clause. Is there expectations by it having an emergency clause that it will be implemented and used in the upcoming May primary?
That would be our expectation.
Follow up. That being the case, my next question is going to be probably for the clerks. Taking worst case scenario of timelines, this passes on the 14th day of April, the last day. There's 10-day veto period, and it doesn't go into law, let's say, until, or signed or not signed until the 24th of April, thereabouts. Are the clerks going to have enough time to prepare and implement the changes made in this piece? Because this is probably our biggest election we have in Kentucky when we have our local election years. Will you all be prepared to implement these changes by the May primary?
I would be amiss to say that timing is not it is of the essence. We have to have absentee ballots printed by the 28th day of March. Machines will be ready. There is definitely a timing issue that it's pertinent that we get this legislation put through as quickly as possible. The gap procedure definitely needs to be taken care of. That 6 days that was missed in 574. That is very important to get taken care of. So there are some timing issues. I think with the most part we can get it done, but the ballots have to be in our office by the 28th day of September.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Excuse me, March.
Yes, sir.
Representative Scott.
Thank you, Chairman. Usually I would ask for an explanation of the difference between the committee sub and the original, but because it's 58 pages, I'll refrain from that today. So instead, my question is, in Section 1, it says an addition of citizen of the United States. Can you all explain to me the need for adding that particular phrase?
Yes, so that's already in Section 145 of the Constitution, which is, I guess, it might be line 8 that you see. That's already in there, but we decided to add that because we're talking about, if you look at it'd be line 4 here, every person citizen of the United States. We talk about state and resident, so it breaks down on the state level, and then the resident of the precinct. So we thought, let's put United States in there too to make sure we're covering all those bases.
Thank you, Chairman.
Representative Cantrell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is about some of the language on page 50 and some of just the process that's outlined on page 41. It's about the online connections for voting machines. So last year we passed a bill here that I think it passed all the way through, was vetoed by the governor because there were some problems that were found later. I think y'all know what I'm talking about. That prohibited any machines from being able to go online. Well, then I think we found out later that all voting machines that are made now are capable of being put online. And that, I guess that bill never actually became law after it was vetoed. And then, so I guess my question is, if we're making it a felony to connect a voting machine to a voting system, I guess it's the difference between a public network and a secured network. Is that right? Can you talk a little bit more about the process? Because I think it becomes an issue of when you allow someone to put those voting machines on the network and how you allow them to put those voting machines on the network. And I think it becomes important for the public because how long it takes for those connections to take place and those results to be tabulated, means how long it's going to take for the public to know the outcome of an election. So can you talk about that process and the timing and how that actually practically is going to work?
Yes, I will try to answer that the best that I can. So last year, from what we understand with that bill, there would have been no election equipment that we would have been able to use, would not have passed what was in that language.
Correct. And we all did that in good faith, thinking
Right.
we just didn't want, people messing around with our networks.
Right. And furthermore, from what I understand as well, and State Board of Elections could probably confirm this as well, Kentucky voting equipment doesn't even have a modem in it. Like, it's not capable of being connected to a network. What we wanted to put in this language was that so there probably is, I believe there is some aftermarket upgrades to equipment that you can do that would allow it to be connected to a network. And some states, from what we hear, actually do allow that. In Kentucky, we didn't want that to be the case, and so that's why we put the language in there.
And that's okay. I'm just wondering how it's going to affect election results being reported on election night. Because I think in 2018 we had some problems with election results being reported in Jefferson County. They were a little bit slow. And I think it was because when the clerk decided to put those machines online and tabulate the results.
Yes, go ahead.
It will not slow down the process at all.
That's great to know.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
When Representative Branscombe says our machines don't have modems, there's a process for voting machines to be certified in a state. First of all, they have to go through a certification at the national level, where there are Republicans and Democrats who look at every machine proposed. At that level, they could have modems if a state wanted that, and some do for the speed of the election results that you're talking about. Kentucky does not. Once they clear the certification and they're tested to make sure they're safe, and they go through a rigorous, and they are allowed to come to the state, then we have our own state committee that authorizes the machines, and they ensure that they do not have modems. So they do not have this capability to be connected. Mr. Chairman, you had Representative Branscombe repeat a section 12 on page 34, line 25, about the voting equipment that tabulates or aggregates votes used in official results from connecting to the internet. I understand there now is a question about that, because the allegation is we don't use voting machines to tabulate official results. But if you read that sentence, it says prohibits voting equipment that tabulates or aggregates votes used in official results. So all of those machines, while they're unofficial until they are aggregated, checked for veracity, then they are used in the official results. So that covers every machine that it can not have external devices.
And
that is a red herring.
Yeah, and the language, was a work group with the State Board of Elections to come up with that language. It took them probably 2 or 3 hours to work through. I think some of the language that you were talking about, and what they didn't want to do is put out language that would keep us from really purchasing any type of election equipment. So we want to make sure that we were covering all the bases there.
It's a very delicate balance, and I
It
really
is.
appreciate you answering my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Nemes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question, something that's been asked to me of an official with the League of Women Voters, and I just wanted to make sure that my understanding is correct. Jason.
So let me clarify how results are processed on election night. So each memory device is removed from each individual machine and brought back in a sealed envelope by a Democrat and Republican member of that precinct or vote center. It also is accompanied by a tape off of that machine signed by all election officers. So that tape is brought along with that. That memory device is inserted into a computer in a room without internet capability, first of all, and nor does the computer have internet capability. That we would run if, say, for instance, we have 14 precincts, we had 14 cards to read. We would read all 14 cards. We would read the absentee card, knowing we had 15 precincts per se. We would know we had all our cards read. It would add all those totals by each race, each constitutional amendment, question, etc. And then we'd get a report at the end that would be broken down by precinct. Now, of course, then we would take a USB, any USB, and download that information off of that machine that is not connected to the internet, that computer. Now, we have to take that unofficial result and took it into a computer that will upload the unofficial result to the state for everybody to view, like everybody wants to know the results now. Okay, you can view it that night. It's still unofficial. Then once we certify the vote, County Board of Election in each county sends in a paper, handwritten, filled out, signed off on official result. That's when that result becomes official. So we are never hooking a machine up to transmit votes that, first of all, are unofficial. The official result goes through a paper, we fax, and we mail the official result to the Secretary of State's office for certification. The SB 49. 49. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? Oh, Nemus.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to let him answer that question before. So I have, I'm submitting this question to you from a friend in the League of Women Voters just to make sure my interpretation is correct. This lady's going to be out of Kentucky for 2 weeks, right before the election. And so, and she wants to make sure that she can vote absentee. It's her understanding that you can only vote absentee in those 14 days. That's not my understanding, to make sure this is right. So you start voting absentee, you can start voting and start requesting the ballot 45 days before the election, up to 14 days, and we're fixing that here. But for her question, she's going to be out of town for 2 weeks. Is she able to vote before she leaves Kentucky?
Currently, no, under 574. Well, if she knew she was going to be gone on the 13th day, yes, she could request an absentee ballot online, have it mailed to her house ahead of time to vote.
She could start requesting 45 days before the election, and then when she gets that, which may take 10 days or whatever, she can vote at any time between then and the election, provided that it's received.
Yes, if she's going to be gone during that time frame.
And that's the law as exists today, whether this bill passes
Yes.
or not. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, we have House Bill 564 as amended by the committee substitute before us. Discussions are complete. I need a motion. I got a motion by Derek Lewis, Representative, and Representative Heverin is the second. Madam Secretary, call the roll.
Representative Blanton,
Aye.
Representative Cantrell, Representative Fisher, Representative Gooch,
Yes.
Representative Heverin,
Yes.
Representative Imes,
Yes.
Representative Cook,
Yes.
Representative Derek Lewis,
Yes.
Representative Scott Lewis,
Yes.
Representative Miller,
Yes, and Mr. Chairman, can I report a yes vote on HB 330?
Yes.
Representative Moser,
Yes.
Representative Nemus,
Yes.
Representative Scott,
Pass.
Representative Weber,
Yes.
Representative Wheatley,
Yes, and briefly explain.
Yes.
Thank you for bringing it again this year. That hole that we had, the gap we had to correct is really important. there are a few concerns here and there, but overall, and I really appreciate the county clerks being involved in correcting their issues. As far as Representative Roberts' work on it, I'm sure it really made everything much, much better. So that we're all proud of that.
No, I didn't.
That's a yes, and we may have missed a vote.
Yes,
here.
we just found that out.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Representative Herron,
Yes, I'd like to explain my vote. I'm going to
Yes.
pass on this today. Obviously, I'm still new and haven't had a chance to look through the bill, but I do look forward to connecting with you all if I have any questions or concerns. Thank you.
Representative Bratcher,
Yes. And House Bill 564 as amended by the committee substitute passes with favorable expressions. Representative Branscombe, Decker, Roberts, and Tipton, thank you guys. You did a great job, I believe. So let's see this thing through. Thank you guys.
Thank you all.